to Fresh from the Studio. This is our program where women in their work artists share what they're working on now with you. Today we'll hear from Adrienne Hodge, Alexis Hunter, and Claire Watson. Each artist will give us a look at their studio, recent work, and share their art making processes and practice. Each artist will have 10 minutes to present. At the end of the presentations, we'll open it up for questions and comments for all the artists. During the presentations, feel free to chat your questions or comments, and then we'll address them at the end of the third presentation. And then we'll move into breakout rooms where you can have a conversation with the artist. The breakout rooms will be open for about 10 minutes. And then we'll wrap up. We'll come back together and share upcoming programs that Women in Their Work has, and any programs that you have coming up, please share with us. So I'm going to stop screen sharing so that Adrienne can begin her presentation.
Thank you, Diane. And I just want to say thank you to Women in Their Work for including me in this series. I'm very honored, and I'm happy to be sharing today's event with Alexis and Claire. So I'm going to start over here, give you a little tour of my space. Got some notes here I'm going to refer to on my board. Are those, can you guys read those, or are they backwards? Good. Okay. So this series that I'm currently working on is, I've titled it Oneironautics. It's a French word that refers to the act of lucid dreaming. I think this past year and a half, everyone could agree has been, pretty mythic time in our lives, and it's caused a lot of us to really slow down and look inward. And I feel like we've had a lot of January 1st over the past year and a half, where it's like, I'm starting a new thing. This is the new me every day, because the days have been so long in the lockdown state. And so one of the things that I started doing about 6 months ago is more consistent dream journaling. And I've been an avid journaler my entire life, but I began to really more consistently record my dreams in an attempt to lucid dream, which I did as a teenager once, and I had not done it again since. And so started learning more about how, just like anything, it's a practice, and it's all about the intention to become aware within our dreams. And, there's two main states of consciousness. There's conscious and unconscious. But within our unconscious state, when we're dreaming, it is possible to, I don't know, I'm just curious, let me show of hands. How many of you guys have had a lucid dream before? Alexis has had one. Diane has. Allie has. Cool. Yeah, so I had that one as a teenager, and then I never had again, but I'm proud to say after 6 months of all this practice that I've been doing, I've had two in the past 3 months. And the last one was very cool because I became so aware, and I was there with my two best friends, and even thought within the dream that they were dream walking with me, and we were, in each other's dreams, and tried to maybe control a little too much. But anyway, so as I've been reading more and more about the state of lucid dreaming, I've learned about this thing, the internal locus of control. And it seems those of us who have a strong sense of that, which means we believe that our actions affect the world around us and our fate. A lot of people are really into trying to manifest things in their lives. So that would, fall into that category. But then a lot of people, tend to think that things just happen and we're all just floating, through life, and things occur and we can't control them. So it seems those of us with a stronger internal locus of control are more apt to lucid dream, because we realize that we can control things in our dreaming lives as well. So I realize I've really been focusing on this idea of dreamscapes for many years. It's a thing that I do when I'm maybe should be working on something else, I paint these very, ethereal, what a lot of people refer to as dreamscapes, but most of the time it's an absent-minded thing that I'm doing with the ink. I mainly work with calligraphy ink on paper. Lately, I've been including a lot more gouache in my work. And so I'll show you a bit more of my work in just a bit. But two of the questions I've been asking myself the most lately are, how do I illustrate layers of consciousness if that's what my intent is? And also, how does our emotional state within dreams and within waking life, how do they affect each other? Because I've really noticed a correlation as I'm recording my dreams more consistently, between, and that seems kind of obvious, but just noticing how much really does show up within my dreams and how I'm processing and moving through the world, the dream world and the waking world. So I've really just been trusting myself a lot more and following these whims, and that has resulted in these very whimsical paintings with lots of layers and more of this symbolism, this visual lexicon of patterns has really started to dominate a lot of my work. So I'll show you a few more pieces that correspond with that idea. This is a very large piece I've been working on canvas for the past year. And I tend to put a lot of the physics equations into my work, neuroscience equations, different scientific diagrams and equations. And more lately, I've been questioning what that's about and the correspondence that I've found within dreaming life, and that asemic writing, or writing that seems to have no apparent meaning in a work of art, is that within a dream, it's really hard to read text. And I've been questioning a lot of people in my life lately, just asking them about their dreams. Like, have you ever read a book in your dream? Have you been able to interpret text? And the more I ask and think about it myself, I've read signs or I've read text in a dream, but I don't know that it's more that I'm aware that that's what it says, or I know that's what it says. But when you really attempt to think, if you've read text in a dream, how many of you guys have read text in a dream? Anybody? It's a thing. I've just realized that it's a thing you can't do. So I guess that's how we know we're really awake, if we're reading. So yeah, the writing and the text that's been showing up in my work more and more over the past few years has really compelled me to start to break that down into, illegible writing or text that is sort of there but not there. So that's where that's coming from. And then the clouds that I've been stuck on for several years now feel a little obvious to represent layers of consciousness and, the ethereal sense of space and time that we have within a dream. And the bubbles are another thing. Don't even get me started on bubbles, you guys, and the science of bubbles. I will use up all the rest of my 10 minutes talking about that. And what else? Oh, so lately, these squares and rectangles have been showing up more and more. And like I said, I've just been trusting myself and letting them happen and not questioning why they keep happening and why I'm so compelled. But, at first it was just like a visual itch I feel like I was scratching. But then I started looking at it more and more and thinking, well, why do I like those rectangles and squares so much? And then it occurred to me that they feel as if they're floating on the page. And there's a bit of a formula that I'm following when I'm putting them in these paintings. I do a very light layer and then a darker layer. And then there's a few layers in between. But then if I put those flat shapes on top of all of these 3D ethereal forms with all this depth going in the background, they really feel like they're floating or they're a bit separate. And I've started making them go outside of the implied frame at the end of the ink on the paper. And when I've questioned everyone about, in my life, I did a little poll. I'm asking people in my personal life, and I've been asking people on the internet, like on my Instagram stories. I put a question out the other day, how many people have had a lucid dreams, and asked them about what they've done in their dreams. And I got some really amazing answers. I could also just talk about all those little interesting case studies I've acquired lately. But it seems most of us, when we become aware within a dream, the initial thing that people want to do is fly. And we all tend to fly in different ways. I've learned that the way that I fly in a dream is kind of rare. I've only talked to maybe one or two other people who fly the way that I do. And that's to swim through the air, by the way. But a lot of people just sort of float. And then I realized that these two-dimensional shapes that I'm putting on top of all of this depth, they feel like they're flying or like they're floating over these other layers of representing consciousness and awareness. So that's the story behind the squares and rectangles lately. And it looks like I am almost out of time. Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I saw Alexis's comment about finally I can fly. Yeah, and not everybody flies in their dreams. I feel like that's a pretty regular thing for me, but some people have not had that experience as well. But it takes practice, and if you come to my breakout room, we can talk more about all the practices that I've been doing to try to lucid dream, since I didn't get a chance to talk about that. But so yeah, but I'll stop there so I don't go over time.
Thanks so much, Adrienne.
Thank you.
Next up is Alexis Hunter.
Hi, y'all. Welcome to Fresh from the Studio. Thank you so much to Women in Their Work for this opportunity, and thank you for everyone for coming out. I'm gonna do a little something over here. Can everyone see my screen? Cool. So I'm working on a series of paintings called Binary that really explore my insecurities about being biracial, and kind of like make the viewer aware of what it's like to exist as a biracial person in society, or also connect with others that feel unwanted or like they don't belong. And so that started with my painting teacher giving us an assignment that was a painting about identity. And so I've always wanted to portray this feelings of like embarrassment, like not belonging, as a biracial person. Like I wanted to be able to visually express that for a long time and had the opportunity with this assignment. And so it all started with this painting. And I had the epiphany that like to be biracial is kind of to be like the last picked for a team, like a dodgeball team or just like a sports team, like being the very last choice. And so with this painting, I had the two teams, and I wanted to also add the feeling of like time running out, like you need to hurry up and be chosen by one of the teams. So I had the water flooding the plane. And I also used my hair to give the background texture because my hair is a huge part of my identity. And And so that painting was sold, and it gave me the opportunity to redo it bigger in this past semester. And so this is my like redo of that painting. I wanted to like make the figures bigger to feel more like leering, mysterious. And throughout the semester, I've just kind of been exploring other ways to convey those feelings. So this, and here are some detail shots from that painting. In this next painting, I wanted to give that feeling of unease with like the tilted foreground, and have like a clock on the wall to kind of like make it as though time has stopped, everyone's looking at you. I have a "Who do you belong to" carved into the table with like water flowing out of the cup for more like time has stopped feelings. And then this was my third painting. Just the same kind of feelings of unease. Some detail shots. These are all still being worked on. But yes, I also, with these works, am exploring the term other. The term othering describes the reductive action of labeling and defining a person as a subalternative, as someone who belongs to the socially subordinate category of the other. The practice of othering excludes persons who do not fit the norm of the social group, which is a version of the self. And just like being a light-skinned biracial person, I've never really fit in with either of the groups, and that carries into the feeling of not really fitting in with my own family. So it's been fun, like exploring this part of me that I don't really talk about, and also like being able to connect with other people that have similar feelings. And that's it, y'all. Hopefully I'm at my time.
Thanks so much.
Yes.
And next up, we have Claire Watson.
Hi everyone. Thank you for coming, and thanks so much, Women in Their Work, for inviting me to participate today. And it's been great to get to know Alexis and Adrienne's work a little bit. I'm in Watermill, New York, but I grew up in Texas and lived in Austin for a number of years, and I come back to Austin frequently. Because my mother still lives there. So I'm in Austin a few times a year, at least before the pandemic. I was in Austin several times a year. I was just there in April, and I hope to come back this summer after the Women in Their Workspace opens. So I love Austin, Texas, and I'm so glad to be part of Women in Their Work. And let's see. So I'm going to start by showing you, just to give you a sense of the setting. I'm just going to show you my studio where I work. I'm going to try to go kind of slowly so it doesn't get blurry as I move the camera, but there's my kitty cat, my studio assistant. And I am right now in the process of starting some new pieces, and this is sort of the way I start, and I'll explain this in a minute, but these are laid out on a canvas drop cloth on the floor. Those are leather coats, mostly coats and pants that I've taken apart, and in a lot of cases I've boiled them and staked them to dry, and then I've flattened them out, and I kind of look at them this way for a while and rearrange them, because I'm using the pattern shapes as found shapes, as found objects. My work has really kind of always been based on the use of found objects, but in recent years, the last few years, that's kind of evolved into this new category of work where I'm starting with leather clothing as the found artifact and making what I can. It started really with a large collection of ladies' kid leather gloves that I had been making into sculptures, but I started putting them together into these sort of tapestry-like pieces, flattening them out and stitching them together. And that's what led me to just experiment with working in larger form with the leather clothing. And I'm going to show you, just to give you a little bit more context and to talk about what I'm working on right now, I'm going to share my screen. Let's see. And this is, what we're looking at here is just a screenshot of my website, just to give you just an idea of these series that go back to the early 1990s, where I was working with tobacco pipes. And that led to another series with kid gloves, and then wooden household tools and hair, combined with hair. That's the series. And then I began combining the tobacco pipes and gloves in this series. This is the most recent of the sculptural work, and I'm going to show you where that came from. These are, this is kind of a slow-moving series based on small children's chairs that I find over time. I don't find the right chairs often, but these are very recent. These are all from 2020. And you know, the found objects interest me in part because, you know, for their visual qualities and their tactile qualities, but also because of the histories that are embedded in them. And then I also see my part in kind of the irreversible stages of altering an object or taking it completely apart and rebuilding it. The irreversibility of that interests me. The fact that I kind of intervene in an object's history and create a new event that can't be undone is something that just kind of intrigues me. So you can see the object. I mean, the object is still there, but it also has disappeared because the black leather is covering it. It interests me that the sort of covering a child's chair with black leather seems like somehow a weirdly appropriate. I don't know how that seems appropriate to me, but somehow it just does. Because stitching through the object while I'm hiding it, the stitches are also bringing out the texture of the surface and the details in a new way, so that the object's kind of dislocated, but you see it in a new way, I hope. Back to what's going on in my studio at the moment. So these are shapes that are laid out that I'll spend a while moving these around and photographing them in different ways to keep records. And then I often do studies on paper where I, paint paper with gouache and then cut the shapes and work with them in a collage-like way to create different variations on the pieces before I sort of commit to tailoring them into these large stretched canvas pieces. I'm not really sure how to categorize the work. It's somewhere between sculpture and painting. They're really not paintings. They're very much built objects, although I am applying some paint in the form of gesso, uh, and sometimes I use ink, but it's just a way of adding I like gesso because it's like a mineral element, and it's opaque and white, but I'm not painterly with it, and so far I've not really been interested in going there. Um, let's see. This is a piece that I just happen to have. Well, for one thing, it's featured on the some of the promotional materials for this event, and it's not in my studio right now. It's sort of on permanent loan to a dear friend. But I happen to have these steps in the laying out and the making of it, and um, I just thought that would be helpful to show you how. Also, this piece is done a little differently. I mean, I'll show you in a minute. I really taught myself how to tailor the curved shapes into a flat piece of canvas. It took a long while for me to learn how to do that, but it just seemed like those techniques were sort of native to the materials, and I didn't want to just glue the shapes onto canvas. I really wanted to use a method of making these that was really integral to the nature of the materials. But this piece is a little different because I had just broken my wrist, and the cast on my wrist was too clumsy for me to be able to use the sewing machine, but I found that I could, when it came to sewing, I found that I could, sort of puncture. I could poke through the canvas with a needle. This shows you the detail. Maybe you can kind of see the stitches, the long running stitches that are tacking these pieces to the canvas, which has applied gesso on it. And I guess I should explain that these are the bodice parts of probably two different leather coats. And I wanted to keep the silhouette or the contour, the outline of the bodice pattern pieces intact, but I was interested in creating sort of patterns within the patterns by sectioning those pieces and creating, sections and intersections in the piece. So this is the finished piece, and it's about 36 by 40 or something like that. 30 by 36 maybe. It's called Sectioned. This is a piece that's in my studio that's about 30 by 50, I think. And it's called Snake Leg. It's very recent, and it is constructed from two pairs of leather pants, black leather pants. And what interests me is kind of finding although I'm not interested in like reiterating the human form, I find the curves and I find that, you relate to the curves and the scale of the human form in the piece, or I hope one does. I mean, that's how I relate to them. And this is the back side of that piece, just to give you an idea of how the leather is set into the canvas and then stretched. And this is a piece that is made from the bodice pattern parts and the skirt parts of a leather coat. And I made sort of, buttonholes and pocket slashes for these sort of wood veneer features that sort of resemble a mask or face. And it's called It Could Go Either Way. And this is about 36 by 42. And I applied gesso from the back. This does have gesso applied, but from the rear. So the gesso is sort of put, I don't know if I could give you a detail. I guess I can't zoom in. The gesso is sort of pushed through the canvas from the back, so it creates a kind of shadow, a lighter area, and it pushes through the weave in places and comes onto the surface. This is called wood eye. It's constructed the same way, and it has I didn't do anything to change the shape of these pieces. The skirt really was kind of flouncy like that, of this leather coat, although it's not all 4 sections of the skirt. It's just the 2 front pieces and the bodice pieces. And wood veneer is, the leather is sewn through the wood veneer and into the canvas. It's set in. And this is the third one. This one actually is in a show right now at the Woodstock Artists Association and Museum. It opens Saturday. The other 2 are still in my studio. And this one is called Petite non plus, like small no more, or it's loose, it's really kind of nonsense French, but, and it's constructed the same way. Again, bodice and skirt pieces of a leather coat. And those are all the images I have. So I have no idea how much time. I hope I didn't go over time. But that's it.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Oh, I should stop sharing, right? Let's see, how do I do that? Okay.
There's a lot of great comments in the chat. I don't see any questions. Does anyone have a particular question for any of the artists before we move into our breakout rooms?